Hey folks, today we're going to take a look at a game that you can purchase right now. That game is called If Mama Ain't Happy, and it's published through the Game Crafter. Now, if you do like what you see throughout the rest of this preview video, I'm going to have a link down in the description section underneath this video. That link will take you directly to the page for If Mama Ain't Happy. You can find out more information about it than I could possibly tell you here, including the expansion packs for the game, which I will touch on in the preview section as well. But just to give you a little brief description of what the game is, it is a competitive card game with a very interesting theme. You and the other players are sort of aspects or avatars of the angry Mother Nature, or Mother Earth, who is trying to finally once for all rid itself of all of the humans, and in order to do that is sending out these waves of natural disasters. Though it sounds very grim, but it's actually done in a very cartoony, comical way with all of the artwork in the game. And so you're going to be playing these disaster cards on, well, yourself, basically. You're trying to get your population to go down as quickly as possible, whereas the other players are going to try to stop you from doing that, and you're trying to raise their population as well. So you have a lot of different cards going on, different types of cards, not only the disasters, but cards that can modify those and counter the other players' cards, and cards that can help the human population of your opponents. Now, we're going to take a brief look at how the game is played with the game from the Game Crafter. Then we're going to come back and discuss it further. If Mama Ain't Happy is a competitive card game for 3 to 4 players. Mother Earth has had enough of humanity and is trying to wipe them out. Every player is an avatar of nature in competition with each other to try and be the first to wipe out the population of humans that they're in charge of, represented by a tracker starting at 100. You'll play cards representing natural disasters like earthquakes and hurricanes to reduce your human population as quickly as possible. If your tracker hits 0 first, you'll be the winner of the game. But the other players will not sit back passively and let you do that, and will attempt to play cards to negate your disasters and even increase your population. And if your population hits 200, you're out of the game. Set up the game by first giving every player a mat to keep track of their population. Take a marker that matches the color of your track and place it at the start space, which is 100. You should also take an extended tracker for if and when your population gets pushed above 100. I will also note that while the game is ideal for 3 or 4 players, it can actually be played with as many as 8 players. For the higher player counts, you'll combine the individual scoring tracks and the overflow tracks into one board as shown, with players placing their colored markers on the corresponding tracks and eventually onto the overflow tracks when necessary. Every player also gets a rules reminder card. Shuffle a main deck of cards, then deal out 5 cards to each player. These will be your starting hand, and you'll keep them hidden from the other players until played. Leave the rest of the deck within reach of all the players. Decide at random who will be the first player. Begin the game with that player and take your turns in clockwise order after that. On your turn, you get 2 plays. Making a play means playing at least 1 card, either against your own population or against an opponent. You may possibly play more than 1 card for each of the 2 plays, called a compound play, because some cards combo together. We'll talk more about that in a moment, but remember, cards that are played together stick together, and can be discarded altogether as well. Instead of using either or both of your plays to use cards, you can instead use either play to discard 1 card and draw a new one. If you have less than 5 cards in hand at the end of your turn, you draw back up to 5. Now let's go over each of the card types and what they do. Disasters are the main card you'll use to lower your population. You'll play it next to your tracker, then lower your marker by the indicated amount. Make sure to keep the cards separate from your other played cards so that you can easily modify them, or so that other players can see them and target them with their cards. Many disaster cards have icons in the bottom left corner that indicate that they are compound cards, and can be played either alone or with other specifically named disaster or reaction cards at the same time on the same play, counting as 1 play. Some cards also have special text effects that occur when you play the card, everything from removing other cards from the board or powerful combo effects with other played cards. Reaction cards are played on an opponent of your choice by putting the card in their play area. These will actually help humanity, and therefore push your opponent's tracker up in the wrong direction. Just like disasters, there are icons and text in the bottom corner indicating that they can be compound played with other cards. But they may also have minus icons which indicate that they will discard an opponent's disaster card, either a specific disaster card, a disaster of a certain type, or any disaster at all. There are also special text effects, including some that allow the reaction cards to be played on already played cards to make them even worse. Modifier cards can be played to strengthen or weaken a disaster, and you can either play them together with the disaster you're about to play, or play it on its own to an existing disaster, either yours or an opponent's. There are no limits to how many modifiers a disaster may have, and you always need to remember to adjust your population track when one is played. Modifier cards are what's called sticky, and once attached to a disaster will also go anywhere with it, either to the discard pile or to another player if it gets stolen or swapped. Finally, there are the special cards. These cards can often be played at any time, even on an opponent's turn unless said otherwise, and when used in this way will not count as a play for your turn. You will also draw another card to replace it immediately when played. Special cards can do anything from reverse card effects that were just played, double disaster strength, give you extra cards for the turn, and more. Players will continue until one of three outcomes occur. If one player can get to 0 population before the others, they automatically win the game, though of course the other players can try and counter that player's final played cards. If all but one player is eliminated due to hitting 200 or more population, that single surviving player, so to speak, will win the game. Finally, if the last card is drawn from the deck, every player, including the last player to draw, will get one more turn. Whoever has the least population at that point will be the winner of the game. Lastly, I should mention there are 2 expansion packs for the game, each with over 100 cards with different themes that can be mixed in with the main cards or played on their own. The Pestilence Pack is all about viruses, diseases, and gruesome injuries inflicted on the humans by Mother Earth over and above regular disasters. Or instead, you can use the Attack Pack, where the animals and insects take their revenge on the humans finally. There are plenty of new card varieties for the existing game, and plenty of new surprises in these packs as well. But however you choose to play, that is If Mama Ain't Happy. Now, of course, as I said in the beginning of the video, this is a very interesting theme for If Mama Ain't Happy, along with an interesting name as well. And it can be a very dark theme when you think about it, but because of the way that it's set up in the game, the sort of humorous card text and the humorous art as well, especially, it's done in a more playful manner. And I also think it's interesting that, you can say that your whole goal is to try to wipe out the human population, but which is just represented by the tracker. But you could also theoretically play the game in the opposite way to try to get as many points as possible too. That's sort of up to you, but let's just talk about the core gameplay elements. There's lots of different cards in the game, those disaster cards, even amongst them, even amongst each of the different card types, there's so many different aspects to them. You have the whole aspect of compounds playing the cards, so you can play a card down with cards that are specifically made to go along with it. So if it's like a hurricane card, you can play like wind debris, things like that, and try to get your population down as quickly as possible. But you can do the same thing with the cards that you're playing to increase the human population of your opponents as well at the same time. And there are modifier cards that you can play after the fact too that your opponent really won't expect. And there's an interesting sort of thing at play where it seems almost like a solo game at first, like, oh, I'm just trying to lower my own population as quickly as possible. That's not going to stay that way for long. You have to be thinking about what your opponents are constantly doing at all times, because if they start getting too low on the track, you might have to pivot and stop worrying about yourself and worry about them. But because it's a 3 or 4 player game, you're looking at multiple people, and it's possible at some point a couple of players are going to gang up on another player, and that leaves one other player getting away scot-free. So you have to always be looking. And that is where the player interaction of the game really comes to play. And there's also a lot of cards that can do nasty things like steal and swap cards, stuff like that. So this is a hand management game. It's also trying to manage the very limited resource of the cards that you have, and also just a combative game in a lot of different ways. And I haven't even touched on the fact that there's these expansion packs that have tons of new cards with different types of disasters as well. Pestilence and the animal attacks cards, all done in the same playful style, so things don't get too grim for you and your group. So with all of the different back and forth, you might think like, oh, it's just a card game, but it's not really just a card game. There's a lot of decision making you have to make at every single turn, and because of the huge variety of cards, each game can feel distinctly different. You can have a nail biter in one game, and another game where like you just are at each other's throats and the deck runs out, something like that. So, if you think that any of this appeals to you or your game group or someone you know, someone you love, if you are stuck inside and looking for, if you've been watching a lot of movies with a lot of like themes about end of the world stuff, as a lot of people have been, because that just seems to be a tendency that people have while they're trapped in their homes, you might also consider this game as well through safe mail delivery. And if you like what you see, go ahead and follow the link in the bottom description section underneath this video, which will take you directly to the page for If Mama Ain't Happy, and hopefully you will consider purchasing the product. That is If Mama Ain't Happy from The Game Crafter. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, for supporting our sponsors. Take care.